And then we talked about stress and this issue of having caveman brains, but living in a modern society for which we haven't yet had half a chance to actually get used to it.
Correct.
So we're filling our body with stress and it's got absolutely nowhere to go.
Yes.
Because there is no saber-toothed tiger to run from or kill. No. And something you said earlier as well is something about the brain. Oh, we are a slave to our brain.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's number 5. And number 6, which I think number 6 was the bundling issue, which may be slightly separate. So let's try and get one bit of advice for each of these if we can. So toxins, we take them into our body, they do damage.
Correct.
How can we, apart from the detox process you've been through, which I think is amazing and so ludicrously simple, doesn't mean taking 5 different pills, which is when you get older, what tends to happen. How can we either deal with the toxins we take in or take in less?
Yeah.
Toxins?
So quite simply, I think the key, if you're going to take 1 or 2 interventions to detoxify, it would be to reduce the amount of carbohydrate that we take in. Not easy because, bread, rice, potato, every culture has it. But if we can try and remove as much carbohydrate from our diet as we can, that would be a big step, because over time that glycogen will remove and the inflammation will follow. Now, linked to that, we know that we can probably survive quite well with 2 meals a day instead of 3. So again, getting into a mindset of eating twice is important. Some things we need to remember, that our body cannot differentiate the need for food, water, or minerals. So when we have those cravings for food, what I suggest is sometimes have a pint of water 30 minutes at that time, or 30 minutes before a meal, and you'll find that your body didn't actually need the food. It just needed water and minerals. So simple things like that. Reduce the carb, go towards a 2 meal a day diet, and look at taking water in when you feel that hunger pang. That would be a good detox. In terms of heavy metal, all the testing we've done is majority of people have aluminium, lead and mercury to some extent in their system. So simple nutrients like chlorella or spirulina, which are available in good health food shops, will help mitigate the risk against the heavy metals. Some people can suffer quite a lot with mercury poison. They can feel depleted. It's almost misdiagnosed with myalgia or post-viral fatigue. So again, just manage the detox. And you can't change where we live, but we can mitigate against those risks. Those would be the fundamental principles that I would apply. And most importantly, try and eat whole food. Processed food is sometimes lacks the nutrition we require. So we're well fed but undernourished. And I think try and aim to eat less but better.
Yeah, I suppose junk food processed food slips into junk food quite easily, doesn't it, really?
Yes.
And what do you say? You're saying that is, apart from the poor carbohydrates, it's full of all sorts of other stuff which our body doesn't really need.
And it's been preserved, it's been manipulated, and it's made for bulk. And we have to remember that, if you're able to get a fruit 12 months of the year when it's a seasonal fruit, you've got to ask what's happened to that fruit to make it available out of season. Yeah. And again, we're feeding our stomachs, but not our cells.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So that was number 1 toxins. Number 2 was cells, and the cells need food. In a way, we've covered that from what you said. Yeah. Okay, well, sometimes it's tough to get off processed junk food. Yeah. In fact, it's difficult.
And I would say it is difficult, which is why supplementation is now essential, just because, again, we have to accept the environment we've created. So if we're looking at the top 3 or 4 supplements, I would say vitamin D hormone. And by the way, vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. The difference is you can make hormones, you can't make vitamins, and you can make vitamin D. A lot of studies pre and post COVID have shown how powerful it is across literally every organ, and it's an immune regulator. So vitamin D, also cellular food and immune food are things like zinc and copper, magnesium, vitamin C. If we can supplement along those lines, that would be very good.
Well, these things are readily available and they're cheap.
They are.
Actually.
Yes.
A lot cheaper than a double pizza helping.
And remember, if we remove the furnace in our body, I call it inflammation, these micronutrients will not be depleted in the wrong way.
Yes.
So by reducing inflammation, you're enabling more of these nutrients to be there for your well-being.
So it's having a double effect.
Absolutely.
You're minimizing the damage that's done from inflammation, and you're removing the kill effect it has on some of the other things, which, if they're left alone to flourish, will do you more good.
Yes. And thirdly, the gut itself should be allowed to repair from time to time. So there are certain foods, processed foods particularly, that create inflammation. And I would say, whilst an aggressive fast isn't necessary, it may be possible to do an 18-hour fast from time to time. That involves one sleep cycle and 6 hours. But you'll be surprised what a difference something like that could make, where you just drink water for those 18 hours. It allows the gut to heal. It allows this autophagy process to kick in as well, and it removes the glycogen at a faster rate.
And the autophagy process was
the fasting.
The fasting.
Yeah, but
and is that the one that's dealing with the scrap
correct
cells?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we do more aggressive fasting, but an 18-hour fast is doable in most cases.
Yeah, well, that's not too difficult actually.
No.
You miss your breakfast. Eat early the day before, miss your breakfast.
That's
you've done it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Number 3 was the mitochondria, the cell, the battery, the energy. What can we do with natural means to support the sustenance of the energy or the building of the energy?
So, first of all, we need to direct this energy correctly to well-being and not fighting off inflammation. So again, going back to the original thing, detox, reduce the load on the mitochondria. That's one way of getting the energy up, reduce the load on it. The second thing is, we know things like NMN, are very good. Nicotinamide mononucleotide, which is a supplement. We know things like resveratrol, very good. Anti-inflammatory agents like turmeric and curcumin indirectly help support the mitochondria.
I put fresh turmeric in my sort of made up drink in the morning.
Yes.
And what I do, I actually just I buy fresh turmeric from the supermarket, chop it up in slices, stick it in a bag in the freezer.
Absolutely.
And then just take out a bit in the morning.
Wonderful. Yeah. The other thing that we don't pay too much attention to, but we should, is B12. B12 is involved in the process of making this energy called ATP from the mitochondria. And we sometimes deplete our B12 levels because our gut doesn't absorb it, or we're not taking enough of it because food is no longer nutrition. So supplementing with B12 will support energy levels. And a lot of our patients who take regular B12 supplements find that they are calmer, they have more energy. So again, it's about feeding the cell and the mitochondria correctly. And your predecessors would have got this from nature in the past. Yes. Sadly, we can't, so we have to mitigate against those risks.
Okay. That's brilliant. Number 4 was the immune system. And we spoke about inflammation, which we've not dealt with it, but we've covered it. Gut health, imbalance, leaky gut.
Yes.
What can we do? I mean, I think in the last couple of years, there's been a massive acceleration in information about the gut.
Absolutely.
And how core it is to our well-being.
Yes.
Something, I mean, I never even thought about 5 years ago.
No. And
so
yes. And I think the key thing here is to not overcomplicate it. So the gut it's an organ, and we're very good at looking at the organ through CTs and colonoscopies, but it has a function. It effectively is your first line of defense, so it allows certain things in and other things not in. And effectively, everything we eat passes through that gut. So if we eat badly or eat things that are inflammatory, the gut's going to protest. It's going to get swollen, and if it's swollen, it's not going to absorb correctly. But also, there's hundreds of millions of bacteria that live there as an ecosystem. And if we feed some of them and not others, we can get overgrowth. And that overgrowth can then lead to poor gut health and therefore poor gut function. Thirdly, by reducing the immune response of the gut through inflammation, other bugs can grow in there, parasites, bacteria that shouldn't be there. So this is not just about the ecosystem being overgrown, it's about other bugs that shouldn't be there. And these are stealth infections. They're slow. They won't cause you to be overly ill, but you'll feel fatigue, you may feel bloated, you'll get gut pains. And when we go to the specialists and they can do all the fancy tests to exclude sinister pathology, colitis, cancer, you're kind of left with a dustbin diagnosis of IBS. Now we know that when we do
Yes.
functional gut testing, we can see that there's imbalance, no harmony. So we try and do everything we can to get that harmony back. We also know that antibiotics are overprescribed, and this can sort of cause problems in the gut. And so what we tend to say is, if you can get the functional gut testing done to see where you are, great. If you can't, then focus on a decent pre, pro, and postbiotic that can regulate the bacteria. And remember, stress, trauma, injury, lack of sleep produce inflammation that directly impact on gut health.
Okay, so the food side of that we've touched on, not covered in detail, but we've touched on it. Stress. So presumably, if we find ways of dealing with stressful moments better, I don't know. I was going to say not reacting. That may actually, make things worse in a way. But if we can find ways to deal with stress,
Yes.
which we all face in this world. I mean, it's an angry world we live in as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things around that can make you, then presumably that will have an immediate knock-on effect.
Absolutely.
So stress management, what they call it.
Yes.
Probably not a very good word for it,
Yeah.
actually, given what we've said, but that will affect a whole series of things, including the way your gut operates.
100%. And remember, our predecessors had stress. The whole point of life is stress. The ability to overcome challenges of food, water, hunger, etc. has always existed. But what we're doing now is overloading. We're putting more and more on our plates, and therefore the body's having to react quicker and harder. And with that, we're depleting. So our resilience drops. So therefore, all the problems become more amplified. Our ability to, as you said, respond changes to a reactive body. And therefore that agitation, it's a vicious circle. We have stress. It leads to lower bandwidth. The lower bandwidth leads to more stress. So that cycle needs to be addressed. And I think we just need to be aware of the impact of what we do, reflect on it, and put in measures to try and mitigate against that risk.
Yeah. Brilliant. There's lots of questions I've got, which we'll save for another time. There's one concern I've got, which is a huge number of well-intentioned medical professionals, including you, who think deeply about this and dearly want to give us a better service as human beings. My question is, we have a massive, very powerful pharmacological industry, which I would have to question where they sit in this process, because it seems to me, I mean, if we're well, if we're healthy, there are no drugs. It's over. You only need drugs when you're sick. So what are they doing? What is their intention with all the stuff you've described? Some of which could be quite a threat for them. What is their response? And what are they trying to do for us? What is their plan for us humans?
Yeah. So we now know through hospital admissions, through surveys, research, that we are overprescribing medication. And the impact of that overprescribing sometimes leads to adverse reactions, adverse side effects, increased hospitalization. I think as a profession, we need to think, do we necessarily have to prescribe this drug? Does the patient have other things that can be put into place, or can we support them to understanding why they're getting what the problem or the signal of the disease, and talk about some of the things that we're talking about? Now, we as a medical profession always say, think before you prescribe about alternatives. But in a 10-minute consultation, it's impossible to dissect this in a way that patients can go home and accept it and do something about it. So I think from my point of view, certainly from my experience of the work we've done, is it is inevitably led to reduced prescribing, stopping drugs, or reducing them significantly. What is also important is that we've now empowered the individual to understand their symptoms and do something about it through their own mechanisms of control. And surely that's a good thing, not a bad thing. At a time when hospitals are inundated, GP practices are inundated, my concern is that the data showing recently has shown that new prescriptions for the same primary indication haven't actually achieved any further benefit. So we're getting more and more sophisticated with the drugs, but we're not actually changing very much. And that is a concern, because when a drug will go through the system, bumbling through, hitting receptors that it may not need to hit, and cause other problems. So surely the starting point should be, what can we achieve for the individual? Now, I'm not saying drugs don't have a role. When someone is sick, they do have a role, but we're not very good at stopping that drug. So it may have been needed in the initial problem, but once that problem has evolved and other mechanisms have been put in place, surely the idea is to reduce that pharmacological intervention and put in more what I call integrative, holistic means of functioning, but all the things we're talking about. So I think the problem I have is that we often see people start a drug and then stay on it, and then another drug is introduced to counteract the side effect of that. And in my work in the cottage hospital, I've seen people on 15, 20 drugs. And the one intervention we put into place that gets them better is stop half of them. Work on movement, work on nutrition. So we as a profession probably need to be more involved in explaining the root cause analysis than jumping straight into the pharmacological world. The issue I have is that the time isn't there. The influence is strong, and with the population screening we're doing now, it's leading to increasing prescribing.
Right. So the conference where one part of the industry was suggesting that they start statins at the age of 16 for life. And I'm not a conspiracist, but it leads me to sort of fear that continual medicating is a sort of a goal, because it's definitely going to cure or stop. Is that something we should be concerned about?
I think we should be mindful. There's been, since people have been talking about this, there's been other publications. One of interest is that over 60-year-olds with raised cholesterols have less heart disease than lower cholesterols. And why, you would ask, why would that be the case when all the evidence is suggesting the contrary? Well, where do you think hormones come from? Your hormones are made from cholesterol. And if we are if this data is correct, and certainly the publications suggest that it might be, then surely the inflammation caused by reducing hormones may be more of a factor than dropping cholesterol. So if we're going to start statins very early in life, what are we doing to the other profiles of that individual? There's also been some studies to suggest that taking statins increases risk of diabetes. So there's all these compounding factors in the background. And I think before we rush into this, we need to take an integrated, holistic approach to the individual. And for me, the data that originally brought statins into play was done on young people. And they found that raised lipids led to more heart disease. But in fact, was it the stress and the inflammation around that individual's life that was more of a factor than the cholesterol? It wasn't done on the older population. So again, what is driving this, we have to be mindful of, and commercial interest is something we also need to be very mindful of.
So statins from the age of 16 for the rest of our lives may not be a great thing.
I would say at the moment, looking at what else is going on in that individual's life, we should probably be spending more emphasis on that. Rather than putting in a last of last on one element. Yeah, great. Well, okay, so here's my final question, which is, I hope I've been fairly diligently following the advice from you over the last 5 years, Ash. So given that, how long do you think I've got? Yeah, well, I mean, judging by what's going on in recent research, if we could continue to feed your cell effectively, and now through peptides feed the DNA properly, data suggests that you will be living till 120. You could be my best friend. And living well. Or dying younger later. Yes, definitely. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you want to hear more, please do follow us. Hit the bell icon so you're notified of other podcasts when they come out. And subscribe to our channel. And I look forward to welcoming you.